2017 is going to be a huge year for video games, and I mean huge. The first quarter alone has released so many anticipated AAA titles, and the rest of the year just looks promising. However, one game to catch my eye is Nioh. Upon asking people's thoughts on it, most say it's just Japanese Dark Souls. My name is Bruce N, and today I'm talking about Nioh versus Dark Souls, the similarities, the basis, and the development cycle for both games.
Well, I never expected you to follow me all the way to these godforsaken islands.
Nioh is a complete beast of its own. Yes, there are similarities to Dark Souls, but saying that it's only Dark Souls in Japanese times or anything of that context just shows how ignorant you are to the subject at hand. As my friend Kevin said it best, don't bunch and demean both series in doing so. Eater, Death's Gambit, and Necropolis are all good representations of Dark Souls, but of course, they're not Dark Souls. Based on an unfinished Japanese script for a film called Oni, and with a development period almost as long as Final Fantasy XV, we finally have our hands on what Team Ninja has been cooking up behind closed doors. However, it always wasn't Team Ninja working on the game. They've only recently worked on it starting in 2010. They were brought along to help with the gameplay. In 2008, Nioh was supposed to be something like a Dynasty Warriors game since Koei Tecmo, or Kekmo, were the lead designers on the project. Kekmo worked on the scenario and decided to go with Samurai. An alpha of the project was completed in 2012 August, and they had to build the engine from the ground up. Lots of trial and error were present when Team Ninja first started on the project. It took time to find suitable gameplay for the time period that the game took place in. Team Ninja was solely chosen off of the success of the Soul series and other similar titles. If you've been living under the rock, the Soul series consists of Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1 through 3, and Bloodborne. Technically, not technically, it's a bit of a touchy area with Bloodborne. They have a very high difficulty, but feature high risk yet rewarding gameplay. Team Ninja loved the Soul series anyway. But just because they're fans of it doesn't mean that only Dark Souls is credited for the gameplay of Nioh. Other influences for the game include Ninja Gaiden, the tough-as-nails game that they're known for, Onimusha, which from watching gameplay and playing it a little bit seems like Nioh more than Dark Souls in some regards, and Diablo for its loot system revolving around player skill and not just god-tier loot. Now, Demon Souls and Dark Souls are always praised by a community of gamers for being amazing games. They're not wrong, the games are pretty dope to be honest. Demon Souls is credited for being one of the deepest games on PlayStation 3. It essentially shaped Dark Souls and onward. Its inspiration was brought about games such as Ico, Dragon Quest, and manga like Berserk, Saint Seiya, and even JoJo's Bizarre Adventures.
But it was I, Dio!
Both games feature a similar UI and both have stylish gear to collect. Dark Souls is comprised in a whole world, essentially, each area requiring a specific playstyle to allow you to safely navigate it without dying continuously. Nioh, on the other hand, is divided up into individual levels that vary in size and pay respects to Demon Souls in that regard. The levels do have their shortcuts that bring you back to certain areas just like in Dark Souls. It's nice to have levels to warp between, but the one thing most enjoyed about Dark Souls is the huge open world that required careful backtracking so you don't end up dying stupidly and you're back at square one. In Nioh, you're able to replay specific levels you've completed before, except at a much higher difficulty. These are called Twilight missions, and the level is bathed in a blood red light and enemies are much more gruesome to fight. Best part is that they're randomized. They change depending on the day, so the challenge you tried to overcome yesterday will be replaced with something that might seem a little bit more doable for you to go this time around. It could also fuck you over in the sense that you've been learning the pattern of a boss during the mission only to find out that it's not the same boss you've been practicing against. Some might just call that lazy on their part for rehashing a level but a little bit harder and making it somewhat roguelike, but I admire it. It gives it a sense of replayability, and Dark Souls just about does the same thing with its New Game Plus, which is pretty much all it really has going for it. In Dark Souls, running out of stamina will kill you. You won't be able to roll away from certain boss moves, block properly, and you'll just overall have a bad time. In Nioh, you channel your inner Super Saiyan and you have to focus on your ki. Ki is Nioh's take on stamina in the Souls games, but on crack. You can recover your ki during a fight with a ki pulse. This is done by hitting R1 at the right time and you'll regain a load of it just to keep you in the fight. If you miss the timing, however, you'll end up extremely tired or worse, dead. Something that's not in Dark Souls as well are the different stances you take based off of real sword fighting techniques. Between high, middle, and low, you can choose any of the three during battle with the R1 button in combination with triangle, circle, or square. It's pretty decent, and I haven't seen a game with a prominent feature in changing fighting styles yet, besides Yakuza 0, but that's something completely different. Dark Souls on PC wasn't the greatest port, probably one of the worst next to Batman Arkham Knight, but frames per second was something that would either make or break the game for certain players. I've played majority of the Souls games in 60 frames per second, and bringing in Kevin for the Dark Souls 3 playthrough was kind of difficult on his end since he's used to Dark Souls running at 30 frames per second. Nioh on PS4 Pro proves to be the best version of the game, allowing us to pick from 4 different modes to run the game on. We have movie mode, action mode on an HD TV and at a 4K TV, movie mode allowing us to run the game at a stable 1920 by 1080 with high quality anti-aliasing at 30 frames per second. Also on the HD TV end, we have action mode, which allows us to run the game at a stable 1080p 60 frames per second. And on a 4K TV, we have movie mode, which allows us to run the game at 3840 by 2160 resolution at 30 frames per second. Alongside action mode, which is a stable 1920 resolution at 60 frames per second. However, if you're like me and don't want to bother with 4K since you don't really have a 4K TV or monitor and don't plan on buying anything of that caliber for a while, the normal PS4 isn't a bad option either. On the standard PS4 you have 3 options to pick from. Option 1, which is movie mode, which focuses on the resolution over frame rate, offering a beautiful high resolution graphic with 30 frames per second. Option 2 is action mode, which has emphasis on frame rate, providing a stable 60 frames per second. And option 3 is movie mode with a variable frame rate, which provides a high resolution graphic with a variable frame rate that may go over 30 frames per second. This is amazing, by the way. It's the equivalent of having low, medium, and high settings on a PC game. Most developers should take notes from Nioh because some games don't always end up running the best on console even after all of those patches. I'm looking at you, Watch Dogs 2. Dark Souls 3 isn't going to be the last one in the series of games. If anything, I feel like From Software could learn a thing or two from Nioh, be it DLC, after-game content, and so on and so forth. Yet they'd still be able to retain the formula that makes Dark Souls, Dark Souls. Both games are amazing, and I would recommend both games to players who are looking for some sort of challenge in recent video games. Just because Nioh took inspiration from the Souls series doesn't mean it's a clone right off the bat. Also, to the people calling Nioh a Dark Souls ripoff, please return your copy of the game to whatever game distributor you purchase it off. Otherwise, uninstall it and never reinstall it. That's just false overall, and it would just go to show how ignorant a person can be when it comes to conversing about video games. I don't think because an RPG is hard, that automatically makes it basically like Dark Souls. It's okay for a game to be like Dark Souls, unless you're Lords of the Fallen and you just turn out to be a huge pile of crap. Dark Souls is the inspiration for many games out there, but you can't forget that it was inspired by others before that. Gamers and designers both love and hate the game. The freedom in the Souls games are amazing. So many memorable moments are made through that even in your 9th playthrough of the game. You're thrust into an open world with barely any tutorial teaching you how to play and what your overall main quest is. The downside to that is that you could miss out on certain portions of the game and end up stuck for hours on end, only to find out that you had to make a left instead of a right. My name is Brucen, and thank you so much for bearing with me during the development period for this video. It took practically a year just to get an idea and about a month to write this script. I don't know why I thought I'd be able to pump out one of these immediately after working on the Destiny vs. Division one. I hope you enjoyed, and if you remember, hit that like button, share the video with your friends and whatnot. I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.
I was a terror since the public school era. Bathroom passes, cutting classes, squeezing asses. Smoking blunts was a daily routine since 13. A chubby nigga on the scene. I used to have the tray deuce and the deuce in my bubble goose.